Alright, I've been mucking around. This is the stock steering column. It's cut the length. You see me turning down this piece on the lathe. It's because what I do for this is I just get a wheelbarrow bearing. I don't know, Princess Auto. I think you get 2 for $3 or something. And it doesn't fit in here, it's too big. So I just turn this down so it'll fit inside of there. Then I'll just weld that on, and then I can tap that sucker in, and I just do a couple tacks on it so it doesn't come out, and ta-da, fancy steering column, old but new. So then it's 3/4 inch shaft, and then you'll be able to put a high, like a wobble joint or something on there, and then go off the steering box. So I'm going to weld this up quick, and then I'll tap this in, and then I will install it onto the steering rod here, steering rod, shaft, whatever you want to call it, and show you the finished product. So it's zapped on, still a little hot. Drop that on. Come on, baby. Little love tap there. A little more than the love tap. So I got the steering column just jimmy rigged in place there. I just threw a strap down, hold it up, because I got to replace the bolts in the column. But that's where she's supposed to sit. I sucked it up a little bit higher than it's supposed to be, but because of the shifter, I'm actually going to put a hole with a bearing up here, so I can do the selector for the shifter, because we're going to use the original column to shift the tranny. This one I got to cut back. Again, I'm either going to put a bearing or I'm going to pull this thing down, pull the column through, weld it. That way there'll be pressure on the bearing. This looks like she's going to clear everything just nice, because if you'll focus, if you line up, it's not crazy amount of room, but there's a little bit of room. There's more than enough room in there. So I got the original rag joint. That's fine. I got to do a slip yoke. I found a wobble, so this was like a weld on. So I'll weld that onto there, and yeah, it should work out. So I'm a little burned out. I've been playing around today, so I'm thinking I'm going to finish that up tomorrow, and then I'll start working on the motor wiring, I think. Probably tomorrow evening, and then I guess I can set the pinion angle on the diff, and put the drive shaft on, and then I guess I'm kind of stuck. I can maybe run brake lines, but I gotta go pick up some parts, so see how it goes. Alright, so here's what I've all done for the steering portion of this. I've taken the steering wheel off, and I have it sitting loose, like it's actually, so it's sitting on the spring, and now it's sort of semi-bottomed out, which then pushes the column down enough that now I've marked this, so this is where I'm going to weld the column up to. So I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to pull the steering shaft out. I'm going to butt it up to there. I'm going to weld it. That way when I tighten it, it'll press down on the spring and get rid of any push-pull slack in the column. So everything now is welded together. So what I have now is an old style column with, you know, like not in the steering box anymore. That's adapted to go to the regular GM box. So I got the steering column in. Well, it's where it's supposed to be. I got to make a bracket to hold it up here yet. I clearanced the headers a little bit, give her some breathing room. So it's got pretty much a straight shot up, so that's good. So here's the bearing I said, here's the shaft. This has to come back, and it's gonna hold the bearing in place. Like, that'll put a little bit of pressure on there, nothing crazy. How that's gonna work, just so there's no clickety clunk there with the column, is there's a spring up here, which will give it just, oops, let me see there. There's this spring on the column, it'll give it just enough clearance, so when the steering wheel is bolted back on, when you bolt it down, it'll just, so you don't have the steering wheel doesn't play at you, it's like bouncing back and forth. So I'm gonna put that on, I'll snug it up, and it should pretty much cover any slack that's down here. So the U-joint, there's nothing down here, it should pull the weld up solid to the bearing. So I'll snug that up and I'll show you. There we go, everything's tight, as you can see. The weld is like tight up to the bearing. Not excessively tight, but there is a spring in the top of the column there, so now technically we're steering. I just got to tighten up at the box side, and then yeah. So now we can throw the horn button back on. Golden, mint, mint. So now I'm going to pull the gauges out because I can't get the top of these. So I'm going to put new screws up there, and then I'm going to build a plate at the bottom that can bolt the column to the firewall now, because there's never had a support. It would have been just held in by the steering box. So now I'm going to build a plate up here, put 2 bolts up there. That'll hold the bottom of the column. We're good. I'll have another hole up there. That's where I'm going to run the shifter out. And I got to make a jig for that yet to the transmission when I get the cable. Now you can see my clamping system I did for the column right there. I was going to do something else, but I found some of these, I don't know, I guess they're like an exhaust clamp. So I'm holding the bottom of the column on with that. I still got to pull the dash apart and bolt the steering column up there. I also have to trim the inner fender up here so I can get the fittings on these lines. They're I need some room, so I guess I'll trim the inner fender just to let everything breathe there. Okay, so everything is in here, but here's my newest problem. So the motor's in. I guess I put it in a little low. Should have put it higher. If you look right there, if it'll focus, you can see my pulley is hitting the steering. Right there. So, way to resolve that is to build a spacer to go under the motor mount. All I'm going to do is plate it up. I don't know if you can see, but where I have the motor mount, I'm going to unbolt this. I'm going to cut another plate, and I'll just stack it up. Should give me enough clearance at that point. Right. So I shimmed the mounts up. Look at all that space. Oh, it's just glorious. That'll be fine though. So I set the pinion angle. I went off the bottom of the yoke. If you don't have one, you can just go right off the U-joint or anything. But I went off at the bottom of the yoke, so it was about 4 degrees. So then I came back here, did the same business, and set it at 4 degrees. So this one was 4 degrees down, and then I set this one 4 degrees up on the ground, ride height. So yeah, that's how I do it. Depending on how much angle is on the front, I'll just do the opposite on the back one. I did the pinion angle, so now I'm just pulling the, I'm going to set the truck down. I got a drive shaft on there. His original one was too short. I had another one in the shed, but I don't have a yoke at the back here, U-joint. But I got to put it down on the ground and see if I got to cut this one down some more or not. See if it'll work, if I got enough slip. So I'll put it on the ground and see how much play I have in the slip yoke up top. So I have no idea what this drive shaft was. It has a Chevy yoke on the one side. It's got a Chevy yoke up there, or is Chevy, obviously, because I shortened it for something. But I have no idea what this side is. And then this is GM. So, wheeling around through my U-joint bin here, what luck. I actually had a brand new one sitting in the box here. So, it's the right size there. You can see how it's smaller this way than it is this way. I don't know if you can see that. So, the one side is for there, the other's for there. So, I'll kind of run you through what I do to put these on. I'm sure you've seen that before. I use a ball joint tool. Just makes life easier. So, let's put that together. So I pulled all the gauges out. I stripped most of the wiring out. Still a big old bird's nest, mouse nest in there. Guy's got to dig out. But I did a bolt to call them down. So this is all ready to buck. I'm going to stab that hole through the firewall and do what we're going to do for a shifter. This will be the shifter. So I'll kind of get it started out the firewall, and until I get a cable, then we'll figure out how to make that work. So I got all the steering lines all hooked up now. Come on. So I opened up the fender well here and ran the lines through. So now I can probably throw a belt back on it. I basically gotta wait till I get a ratchet. I gotta see what I gotta do with that filler neck yet. Redo some of these fuel lines. Although again, I don't have a fuel tank, so we're gonna have to figure that part out. But I'll throw the wiring on and see where things are gonna fit. Maybe run some brake lines. Yeah. See how far I get here. Okay, well, seeing how this truck was, well, the S10 this motor came from was standalone, like running independently already. So the computer I know is unlocked, but he was using the stock fuse box, which was probably plugged into the S10. So instead of reinventing the wheel here, seeing as it worked, I'm just trying to figure out where I feed power into the box for the ignition side. Like I can tell which side's battery side. That's pretty straightforward. But then it goes over here, like a really long wire for some reason. But anyways, goes to this, which then goes to the PCM, which is for the electric fan. So we know that's been done. So that's good. So basically, I'm just trying to figure out where in the back of this mess I feed my ignition power. And for some reason I'm thinking they're up here, but I gotta look that up. So I'll let you know as soon as I figure that out. So, alright, after doing some reading, turns out of this whole fuse box, if you want to use these ugly things, it is actually on this plug, 2 pins down. I don't have the plug, so I just soldered the wires directly to it. But 2 pins in. This one is constant battery power. So I just looped it around to the stud on the side. And then for your ignition, it is the 4th wire, 4th pin in on the bottom is keyed ignition. And then to use the fuel pump relay that's built into there, on this plug up on the top part, you're going to use the last one. The bottom left corner. I don't know how they're labeled, but so constant power, 2 down, second row from the right, 4th pin down on the right, last plug is key, and fuel pump. So that should technically work. We'll find out shortly. Probably not right now, because I don't have a battery. And I don't have a fuel system in it yet, and many other things. But Okay, we got our ghetto setup here because my tank is just sitting in the box loose. But I want to test to see that this stuff that I showed you was right. I pulled the purple out, which is the key. That one is, this battery box is almost dead, so it's not going to crank. So we got that. That is good. This is that purple, so that should be our ignition. And you can't hear it, but I just heard the pump kick in the back. So, technically it's good to fire. I'll just need a battery and whatnot, but just wanted to test the systems, make sure this is right. So I think it's all good. So, yeah, not a very exciting ending, but yeah, it's about where we're at right now. Pretty much need some parts. I can do a little bit more, but not a lot. So I guess to do a recap on everything that was done here was, yeah. So we got our power steering in, our belts are all done. Steering, oh, I said that. I think I have the fuse box all ready to go. I'm just waiting on my harness. I have to make a bracket for it, I have to make a bracket for this, but I don't want to do that until I get my booster in. This is for the electric fan, so clean up a little bit of that wiring. Haven't done the shifter yet, but I need to do, I need to get a bearing for that. The fuel tank was a fail under the truck, so for now, just to fire it and move it, I'm just putting the tank in the box here. So that's the power, that'll be the ground. The lines are just temporarily run under the truck. The drive shaft's in, the diff is bolted in, welded, shocks are hooked up. I think the only thing I can do really right now is I can run brake lines and I guess build a battery box. I got to do that. I'll probably mount it on the firewall. Yeah. I think that's about her. So, I think we're going to call her at that. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.